The one where everybody finds out. Written and read by Badwriterrr. Chapter 2. Katara. Katara was focused. Well, as focused as anyone could be with the impending date of the great comet. She tried to push it off her mind, focusing on the water levitating beneath her hand. She was just about to head back inside when she heard a distinct shout. Less of a shout and more of a yelp. It was her brother. Unmistakably her brother. She stopped and raised her brow, wondering what kind of trouble Sokka had found himself into this time. Just before she went to turn around and let Sokka deal with whatever it was, she heard another noise. A groan. A very painful and guttural groan. Zuko. It was Zuko. It was not the kind of groan made in training. No, he and Sokka were fighting. Really fighting. And Katara started running, her heart sinking. Just when she'd come to trust Zuko, just when she allowed herself to see him as more than the enemy. They were louder as she neared, diving through the thickets of leaves that gated the back of the house. Deep grunts as the two battled, panting as the sounds of bodies wrestled. Despite his skills as a warrior, Sokka was little the fighter Zuko was. What with his years of training, not to mention his ability to blast fire out of his hands. Sokka was no match. She prayed she could get there in time, the stiff, frozen feeling building in her chest. Then suddenly she pulled back a tall mound of grass and she saw them in the heat of battle. Except Sokka was winning. He had Zuko pinned to the ground, flat on his stomach. And then Katara's brain caught up with her. It was in that moment she decided to pluck her eyes out with a fork when she got back, because she very quickly noticed both boys' state of undress. Sokka's pants pulled around his ankles, his loincloth askew. He was hunched over Zuko, who was completely naked, spare for one leather boot. They were both moving together, at quite a rapid, forceful pace. Katara squeezed her hands over her eyes as she heard Zuko grunt, "Oh, Agni! Sokka, right there!" "Oh my God!" Katara blanched, pressing her heels into her eye sockets. "Katara!" Both boys yelped in unison, rocketing away from one another. She removed her hands but made eye contact with the sky instead of either of the boys. "Are you kidding me? Are you actually kidding me?" she snapped as Sokka fumbled to pull his trousers back on. "Katara," Sokka said slowly, in the same tone that he might use with a wild animal. What? Sokka, what in Chu and La's name? What the fuck?" she spluttered, gesturing between the two. Sokka slowly approaching her, hand outstretched as not to spook her like an ostrich horse. And Zuko, still completely butt naked, searching frantically through the tall grass to find his clothes. "I," was all Sokka could spurt out before Katara's eyes locked on Zuko again, and she was storming for the nude teen. "You!" she shouted, throwing a finger at him, using her free hand to open the water at her hip. Zuko's hand shot into the air at defense, then quickly back down to cover himself. He was positively purple with embarrassment. "You know, I was really starting to come around, Zuko." Katara glared, summoning the water and elongating it like a whip and shooting it outward at him. Zuko, despite his fumblings, was quick enough to dodge and throw up a wall of fire, turning what came too close into steam. She shot out another jet, and Zuko rolled to the ground, escaping what would have been a very painful bullseye to his exposed groin. This time, throwing an arrow of fire, forcing her backwards before she had the chance to make up another shot. She pulled the water back and again striking out at Zuko as he tried to extend their distance. Again narrowly escaping, throwing out another ball of fire from his hands. It missed her, but not the dry grass behind her, setting the patch alight. "Katara!" yelled Sokka, putting himself in between the two. "At least let the man put some pants on before dueling him for my honor, honestly!" Katara glared and, with a humph, returned to the water into her satchel. The world around them had quickly caught ablaze, which Zuko swiftly put out with a sweep of his wrist. No, he let out helplessly, eyes on what looked to be a charred pile of cloth. Fierce blue met fearful amber. She had really trusted him. After helping her avenge her mother, she really thought she had seen another side to Zuko. And yet, here he was, violating her brother. The Fire Nation stealing yet another person from her. Her mother, her father, now Sokka. I trusted you, she said, voice breaking. Zuko took a deep breath, and his gaze met the dirt. He's my brother, my only brother, and you... Enough, Katara, said Sokka in a firm voice, void of all humour. He's from the Fire Nation, Sokka. He's the fucking prince. Have you gone mad? Sokka took a breath. Is this really what it's about? Would you really attack Ty Lee or any other Fire Nation girl if you caught me with them? Or is it... She cut him off, already knowing where he was going. If they had spent the last 3 months chasing us around the world trying to kill us, yeah, probably. I wasn't trying to kill you. I was after Aang, said Zuko in a muted voice, scratching his neck and looking inconspicuously at the pile of ash where his clothes once were. Not really helping, babe. Oh, great. So you two are like a thing then? Her voice like icy daggers. No one replied, either too scared to admit it or uncertain enough to state it. You know, I've had enough of this, she growled, reaching out and taking Sokka by the elbow. Stay the hell away from my brother. She made it a few good paces before Sokka managed to free himself. Giving up, Katara stormed away from the both of them, fuming. It was nightfall before either of them returned to the house. She saw them from the porch where she had been brooding. They were quiet, yet hand in hand, Zuko with a large tree leaf to cover his decency. They stopped when they saw her, splitting apart, eyeing one another before Sokka turned and said something to Zuko, the two making their separate ways, Sokka directly toward her, his stubborn footsteps thumping as they neared. Have a good day, she said with a snarky tone. Not as great as I had been hoping, he grunted, taking a seat beside her on the steps. She sighed, turning to her too accepting, too forgiving brother. He's Fire Nation. I'm well aware. Then how can you... Because I love him. His voice hiccuping, then catching himself on his own words. Or at least I think I do. I don't know. We haven't talked about it, any of it. Katara rolled her eyes and dropped her head into her hands. Because out of all people Sokka could have experimented his sexuality with, it had to be the Prince of the Fire Nation. And now he thinks he loves him. Because of course he does. He's Sokka. He cares too much for his own good. He's the goofy prankster with a heart too big for his chest. Is it really because of all that? Are you lashed out? Because he's from the Fire Nation? And not because he's, a dude. Very seriously, Katara met Sokka's eyes. Of course I don't care about that. Is it a shock? Yeah, I guess I didn't see it coming. What with Yue and Suki. Sokka bit his lip and closed his eyes. It seemed like he'd been thinking about this for quite some time. I like girls too, though, with Yue and Suki. It was real. I just also like guys. Katara gulped. How long? How long have you known? Since Boiling Rock? She asked. Do you remember Dad's friend? The one that used to come fishing with us when we were younger? I forgot his name, but him. Yeah, that's when I figured it out. Sokka! Katara chided. That was so long ago. You've known since then, and you didn't tell me? I had no idea. I guess the only time I heard people talk about it, liking guys, it wasn't in the best light, and I thought I was scared you would react like this. Katara's heart hit the floor, and then some. Sokka, she cooed. Dad and we've never cared about that kind of stuff. You're my brother. That's exactly why I'm so scared about you being with Zuko. It's because I love you. And yeah, maybe I trusted him enough to help us defeat his father, but I can't trust him with your heart. I just can't. No one would ever be good enough for you, especially not him. Yeah, well, you don't see me chasing Aang around with a boomerang, do you? Katara blushed and pretended not to hear him. Yeah, well, you also didn't walk in on me and Aang doing any of those kind of activities. Sokka's eyes hit his brow. You and Aang better not be doing any of those kind of activities until you're much older, or I'll be joining back up with the Fire Prince to capture the Avatar. Says you, she glared. I'll have you know that Zuko and I are adults. I mean, sure, it's not legal in this nation, but we're old enough. And you and Aang are still babies, so I don't want to be hearing none of that until many, many years in the future. Preferably never. All right, Mr. Adult, why don't you go write about it in your little diary? It's an idea journal.